Hello, Steve Arts 89. Well, I hate it when the alt-writer write, but they did predict or hope that Doctor Strange 2 would drop a lot in the second week, and it did. It was a pretty big drop, 82%. So it went down to less than 17 million for the Friday. So that's not good. I don't think that was the whole weekend, that was just the Friday. But yeah, I mean, that was sort of predicted, and it's not really unheard of with the big blockbuster superhero movies. It earned 16.73 million on its second Friday, down 81.5% from 90.7 million on the opening day, although that did include 36 million worth of first day preview grosses. The drop is still on par with Black Widow's 79 second Friday drop, and it's the biggest Friday to Friday drop ever for Disney and an MCU movie, so that's not good. It's essentially tied with the 81.6 second Friday drop of Batman vs Superman in April 2016, and we're probably looking at a near identical 67% second weekend drop and 61 million weekend gross. We're still talking about a 247 million 8-day domestic gross and a likely 10-day cum around 288 million. And Sony Spider-Man No Way Home dropped 83% on its second Friday, Christmas Eve, and 67% on its first weekend, and still earned 1.7 times its 470 million 10-day total. But that's probably not going to happen with Doctor Strange. Because there's no school holidays and so forth. Now, this is from a Forbes article. I'm reading parts of it. Black Widow dropped 68% last summer, a record for the MCU movie then, ahead of its 62% drop for Spider-Man Far From Home and Ant-Man and the Wasp. So a lot of these big films have dropped off high. Yeah. I mean, when you look at the Eternals, they had a 62% after a $70 million debut. Captain America Civil War, Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 3 all earned 1.38 to 1.4 times their respective 10-day domestic totals. I'm not sure I'm understanding that. If Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness plays likewise, you'll be looking at 398 million to 405 million domestic finish. So that's a bit disappointing. I was hoping that wouldn't happen because a lot of people who didn't like the film because of some representation and diversity in the film were really hoping it wouldn't do well and trying to give it a lot of bad reviews and bad word of mouth. But it did really well the first weekend, and people were like, damn. You could just tell they were disappointed because they thought they doomed it. And then they were hoping it would drop really hard for the second week, and it did. So it's a bit disappointing to find out that happened. Speaking of disappointing, we've had a lot of shows be cancelled from the DC's Arrowverse. And, I mean, first it was Batwoman was cancelled or not renewed, and Legends of Tomorrow was also gone. But we also lost Naomi, which was in its first season. I haven't seen it. I hadn't heard anything good about it. I have no idea who she is. I've never heard of the character. But she's gone. And it's kind of funny because I saw this article, what's it called? Why DC's Arrowverse shows got cancelled. It wasn't the CW's fault. And they talk about the fact that the network is being sold by Warner Media and Paramount. And they blame Warner Brothers not wanting to pay for the studio space. And I'm like, well, of course not. When they're cancelling the show, they're gonna cancel the leases on the studios. Why would they pay studio space for a show they're not going to continue? They cancelled the shows because they weren't making a lot of money, and they weren't getting the kind of attention that they wanted them to. They were all declining. None of them were really holding steady. And even though they were popular with some people who were really fanatical with them, they weren't appealing to a general audience. They weren't sort of doing what they were wanting them to do. So, of course, they got cancelled. And just acting like, oh, they just didn't want to pay for the studio space. That's why they cancelled it. And I'm like, they're not going to care about paying for the studio space if they're making money out of the show. So that's one of the lamest excuses I've ever heard. And that was from The Direct, right, which I haven't heard of that their website before either. And they do get into talk that maybe some of these shows could be brought back last minute because supposedly the network didn't want to get rid of them. It was just Warner Brothers didn't want to pay for the studio space, and somehow that meant that they couldn't make them. I'm not really buying it. And people are a bit worried about Superman and Lois and Stargirl and The Flash, which are the last seasons of Arrowverse shows that are happening. The Arrow I think is finishing. Sorry, The Flash I think is finishing after the next season. But Superman and Lois and Stargirl, which I've never seen, supposedly, they could, if they're popular, could go on for a while. So if they end after the next season, that would be disappointing. But Superman and Lois is doing well, but it's not doing as well as it was, and that's partly I blame on the fact that they keep moving the schedule around. And some people are saying, oh, they do that all the time. And I'm like, they actually do, but they seem to have had bigger gaps with this. I'm seeing like one episode a month basically, and I've sort of given up. I was subscribing to Binge to watch it, so I could watch it on the TV properly. But I just gave up because I was paying basically a month's subscription fee for one episode, so I cancelled it. So yeah, but another interesting thing that is happening now, as I mentioned, Batwoman is gone, but a lot of people are not happy about this, and they're actually starting a Batwoman campaign, a Save Batwoman campaign. It's kind of interesting. They set up a GoFundMe, and people weren't sure what that was for. I thought that was to try and actually fund the series. I'm like, they're not going to get enough money to give a donation, because they tried that with Star Trek Enterprise. They tried to raise enough money to fund a season, because it all came down to money. If someone had just magically popped up and given them $20 million to make a season, because I think it was about $2 million an episode, and I don't know, if someone had given them, if some rich Bill Gates type had just said, I really like that show, here's $40 million, go do a 5th season, they would have done it. And I thought they were trying to do that, and everyone was sort of laughing like they're never going to raise enough money. And what they're doing is they're using it to campaign. So they've just erected a billboard in New York City. I nearly said New South Wales. That's an Australian state. If you're in America watching this. So I don't know, is it going to work? Their idea is to put up more of these billboards all around different cities and different countries to basically, alert people to the cause, and particularly with HBO, because it's also, what was the other slogan? It was Save Batwoman, and so I think it was Save Batwoman HBO. They were trying to get HBO to pick it up, and they had a separate slogan. I can't see it in the article. Sorry. HBO Max Save Batwoman, and then just Save Batwoman. They were the two hashtags they sort of had going. And they're trying to draw attention to HBO Max to say, hey, save the series. So they are not trying to raise enough money to fund a new series. They're just trying to raise enough money to, campaign and get the attention of HBO Max and show them that there actually is an audience. But there isn't an audience. That's the problem. There may be a small amount of people who love the show, but they don't make these shows for a small group of people. They make it for the general public. They need to have a certain amount of viewers. And it doesn't matter how much you relate to the show or how much you think it represents you. If you're a too small a minority, it's just not going to happen. And I don't like to say this to my people, but we kind of need to understand we are the minority. And even if we love a show and we fully support it as a community, that's not enough to do it. If it's a mainstream expensive show, it's not going to happen. Maybe on a small cable network we can sort of support a show, but not sort of like a mainstream sort of superhero show, which is really expensive. So if all it is representation, it's not going to engage the general audience. And that doesn't mean they're racist or sexist or homophobic. It just means they, like us, are self-involved and they want to see their stories. They don't want to see our stories. So it's not that our stories aren't valuable or worth telling, but they're not going to engage the general population. So it's never going to work for expensive mainstream shows, I don't think, focusing on representation, diversity and minorities and so forth. It is artistically and morally sound to do shows like that, and there will be people who are really dedicated to them because it's one of the few shows that represents them. But if there's not enough of those people relating to it and supporting it, it's just not going to work. So I don't see Batwoman coming back. I don't see another era where places like the CW focus so much on representation and diversity, because it's never going to be the mainstream. It's just never going to be. We need to be represented in general to say, oh, we should never go back to the days of all white casts and that. But I don't think it was never going to work, and we're never going to see the days again of, the main characters being the minorities, because it just doesn't make any sense mathematically and financially for a studio to do that. They tried it. It went okay with low expectations, but ultimately it's failed, and we need to just accept we're minorities, so we'll always be just part of the cast, part of the story, unless it's a small cable channel and a small independent film or independent series or something. We're not going to be the centre, because it's just about numbers. It comes down to numbers and money. So yeah, good luck to them, but I don't see it working. Feel free to share, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I'm wrong. Thanks. Bye.